If not, I have an important announcement to make, particularly in light of the number of questions that we have heard about the DEIS, and that is that the record on this matter is going to remain open for 10 days to receive comments on the DEIS, and it will be open through Monday, August 7th of this year. And with that, the public hearing is closed.
Borough of Brooklyn, calendar numbers 42 and 43. Calendar number 42, CD1, C150278ZMK. Calendar number 43, N150277ZRK. A public hearing in the matter of applications for a zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning Pfizer sites rezoning. Notice, a public hearing is being held by the City Planning Commission in conjunction with the above ULUP hearings to receive comments related to a draft environmental impact statement. This hearing is being held pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act and the City Environmental Quality Review.
We'll just pause for a few moments to allow people to leave and enter the room.
Okay.
Any particular order?
Yeah, the order that they're in. Just,
You want this at the end?
no, just put
Okay.
one to confuse people. Chris, I got it.
I would invite the applicant team to make a total of 10-minute presentation, and that would be Ray Levin, Magnus Magnuson, Jeff Rubin, who is available for questions, Lee Silberstein, who is available for questions, Iris Wang, available for questions, and also Lisa Sabanyevich, available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Raymond Levin. I'm
Good afternoon, Commission. I am a resident of Williamsburg, here with the Broadway Triangle People. We are here because the...
Sir, you will have the opportunity.
It's not...
You will have...
We oppose this. We oppose this.
DCAS police, you are disrupting the public hearing. DCAS police, you are disrupting a public hearing. Please disperse immediately or you will be subject to criminal summons. DCAS police. This is not working either. LT, prepare DCAS police, you are... Attention, you are disrupting a public meeting.
Discriminatory against Black and Latino communities.
Nosotros queremos justicia. Nosotros queremos justicia. Justicia para todos. Nosotros queremos justicia. Nosotros queremos
I know, he hit his head.
You gave us a scare, Jim.
He hit his head on the tape.
Okay, the 10 minutes begins.
Good afternoon again. My name is Raymond Levin. I'm with the law firm of Slater Beckerman. We are counsel to the applicant, Harrison Realty. I'm going to quickly go through this project, the history of this project. We filed an original ULURP application in early 2015 and proceeded with that until this commission and the city council adopted MIH. We redid our application to conform to the MIH requirements. And since then, we've been proceeding. We tried to have a scoping meeting, which was shut down, similar to what was attempted today. We then had a second one. We met with, tried to have a hearing at the borough president's office, which was shut down, similar to what they attempted to do today, and we're here. We have the site that we're trying to develop. Was occupied by the Pfizer pharmaceutical company for many years. They started here in Brooklyn in, was it 1849. They finally shut down operations in Brooklyn in 1989. An urban renewal plan was placed on this property in a broader area than the site we're talking about today. That they attempted to get through EDC, and I think the predecessor PDC, industrial development for the property. That went on for a number of years, and eventually in 2009, the urban renewal plan was modified. The area to the east of this site was changed to residential zoning. The M zone was left on these properties, but they were removed from the urban renewal plan. There was a lawsuit against the zoning change for the residential properties. These properties are not part of that lawsuit. The project location, as I said, it's an M zone now, but it's surrounded by residential zones. And to the south is Marcy Houses. Here is Woodhull Hospital. There's the yeshiva here, public school here, Lindsay Park houses here. It's in the middle of a neighborhood that's all residential at this point, and so we think it's appropriate to have residential use here. We're seeking zoning change from the M3 to 3 different zones, as you can see on the zoning map here, extending the R7A that's across the street on Harrison, R7D in the middle of the site, and R8A on the wide street of Union Street. That creates a development that goes from high buildings of 14 stories down to 5 stories. The project site is divided by public open space. It encompasses 8 buildings, 1,146 dwelling units, 287 affordable. Those numbers are based on an average of 1,000 square feet a unit. And there's a retail at the base and parking. Next. This is just an image, I guess we have it twice, that sort of gives a sense of the high to low. Next just shows what the ground floor will look like. The ground floor, you can see that there's retail fronting on all of the streets and on the open space. The gray are parking. Parking areas will be at grade, and they will be covered by decks, and they will form courtyards for the residential properties. And the yellowish are the entrances to the 8 residential buildings. Next, the public open space, which will be mandated in a restrictive declaration. It runs down the center. It divides up these rather large blocks. Will be maintained, constructed by a developer, basically the width of a street, 65 feet wide, and it'll have trees, benches, tables and chairs, bike racks, and other things that will make it a very pleasant environment. Next. We're also having a MIH designation. We think that the mandatory inclusionary housing is a signature accomplishment of this commission and the city council. The requirement of permanent affordable housing and stabilized designation for the market rate housing is an important commitment to the city. We want to make sure that MIH succeeds and succeeds on sites such as this. This is a privately owned site. It'll be privately financed. There will be no HPD subsidies, but it will have HPD oversight. And I want to make that clear that HPD that has the role, there'll be an administrating agent, and these units will be offered through lottery. They are extremely needed. As we all know, 60,000 to 80,000 people apply through the lottery whenever there's an affordable unit. And we will provide something on the line of 287 of those if this goes through and we're allowed to build this project. We've selected option 1, which is the deepest affordability, and we think that relates to this community. It would be 115 units at 40% AMI, 115 at 60%, and 57 at 100%. That is the MIH requirement. Next. The developer, the principal of Harrison is the Rapsky Group. They're a Brooklyn-based group. They've developed over 2 million square feet in the city, 2,000 housing units, 1,000 of which are in Community Board 1, actually. They've developed 100 units of voluntary inclusionary housing, and working with Dunn Development, 97 units of 100% affordable housing. And there are some images of some of the buildings they've done. We believe the benefits of this project, besides providing all of that affordable housing, which the city desperately needs, and market rate housing, which the city needs as well. Market rate in this neighborhood is not what people think of as market rate on 57th Street in Manhattan. This is not the waterfront in Brooklyn. This is in the middle of Brooklyn, and rents here the market rents are not are not those huge rents that you find in some of the other parts of the city. We're going to remediate a site that's been contaminated over the years by FISA. We're going to create and maintain public open space, the affordable units. We are going to have retail, which is needed in this area. The community board asked that we be sure that we include retail in our project. We've committed to pay prevailing wage for service workers, and we've set a goal of 25% of local minority and women business enterprises. We intend to aggressively pursue that. And in terms of the lottery, we're working to have information sessions. We're going to notify the community board and local community groups as that date approaches, and we're going to work on workshops for helping people understand the ability to fill out the application and whether they actually would qualify under the lottery rules. I didn't hear a bell, but I ran through it as quickly as I could, so.
We always appreciate efficiency.
I could say a lot more, but if there are questions, I'll answer them now. After me, the architect will go through the architectural elements of this, but I have a strange feeling there might be some other questions.
No, I apologize. This was set up as a team presentation, a total of 10 minutes. So the architect can continue, and then we will ask questions of the team.
We'll have the team, okay, so I will be able to
Yep.
answer. Okay, fine, no problem. Magnuson Architects.
Thank you, Ray.
So rather than being efficient, you ran the clock on your team members. So at this point, I will open it up to commissioners for questions. Yes.
Sorry.
Commissioner Dweck.
So, thank you. There's obviously been a lot of concern from the borough president and Councilmember Reynoso about the unit mix and the sizes. Perhaps you can speak in greater detail about that and whether or not you'd be committed to some changes as recommended by the borough president in his report?
In terms of unit mix?
Yeah, I'm speaking specifically to unit mix. I know there's a host of other
Yes.
recommendations which are all very important to me, certainly as a commissioner, I believe to many of the commissioners, and I'm going to give the opportunity to other commissioners to weigh in on that, but I'm going to start with the unit mix right now.
Okay, this project, financing this project is going to be privately financed. It's going to be several hundreds of millions of dollars without HPD subsidies. So we need private financing for this, not only to build the project, but to do the environmental remediation that the site requires. We clearly want MIH to succeed. To date, I think that for privately financed, privately owned sites, the history is spotty, I guess. And we certainly want to make this work. The neighborhood needs 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units. There's no doubt about it. And from an economic point of view, per square foot, a 1-bedroom unit gives you more return than a 4-bedroom unit, which we assume that our financing will look at those. So right now, we're not looking to commit to a specific percentages of units, because one, it's something that's going to be worked out and based to some extent on financing. We also we want to balance the community needs, the market, and the financing needs to come up with what that balance is going to be. And we certainly don't want to say, well, we're going to do X percent 2-bedroom units today, and then change that when the financing comes in. And this project is under a lot of scrutiny. We certainly don't want to say something and then it not, and then go back on it. So we are committed to doing a range of units. We think the community needs a range of units. As we move forward and our financing is put in place, we will know what those are. There'll be a regulatory agreement. Obviously, you know that whatever the affordable, whatever that breakdown is, the market rate's going to be the same. And the market rate is 75% of the project. The affordable is 25, and they're going to have to match pretty much. There's a lot riding on that from financing. Maybe I'm beating a dead horse on that issue, but at the
Commissioner,
moment, we're not looking to commit to a specific percentage.
You stated that the community needs the area needs a range of units, and,
Yes.
and you excluded studios in that range when you
Yes,
spoke.
the community,
I would imagine that on a financial level, studios on a per square foot basis would actually have even a greater return. And
well, it depends on what your market is. You know, this community is a family-oriented community. The community board said they wanted family units and sort of encouraged us not to do it on one of the other projects that this developer worked on with affordable housing. Is a substantial number of studios. It's a different kind of community.
Speaking specifically to this site in question, sir. So, I mean, is there a reason to exclude studios
We were asked to,
by,
community board.
and the borough president's recommendation
Is
the
to
opposite?
include, is the opposite, that's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Deleuze.
I'm wondering if you would mind putting up the map that shows the site within the neighborhood location.
Oh. The location app?
Thank you, appreciate it. Can you point out where the boundaries of the community boards are relative to this map?
I believe, and I believe that it's Flushing and Broadway.
And I'm just wondering, you know, obviously, you already said, obviously, that the project's under a lot of scrutiny, and I think you know that. You know, there's been precedent for projects, especially for large projects, to have affordable housing lotteries that are beyond one community board, and especially given the proximity of multiple community boards here with very different demographics. I'm wondering if you could speak to whether or not your client would be open, if HPD approves of having an affordable housing lottery that would give preference to residents of multiple community boards.
Well, I think maybe the state has answered that question. Yesterday, it was announced that the 421A regulations now do not have a 50% requirement for any community board. And secondly, there is a pending lawsuit regarding that as well. So it's up to HPD, not to us.
Okay, so obviously, that's helpful, and I know that, I believe in the documents that were submitted, that the planned administrative agent for the affordable housing lottery would be the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
We've contacted the Brooklyn Chamber to run the technical training sessions and bringing people's financial abilities and understanding how to fill out the applications. We went there because the project is contentious. There are various neighborhood groups with different views of this, and we thought that maybe a neutral party would be right, while we expect that certainly all of the local non-for-profits would notify the members of their community to take advantage of those training sessions, but we've reached out to a broader-based group.
And if you don't mind, could you talk a little bit about what criteria you might use in selecting administrative agent, given the number of fair housing issues that might come up relative to this project?
The last time this developer worked on a voluntary inclusionary project. He prepared an RFP, which was sent to several citywide groups and several local community not-for-profits. Based on that and HPD's wanting a group that had experience in dealing with a large number of units, an administrating agent was selected. But everyone was asked to submit, and the results of that were, in that project, the results was the Housing Partnership Development Corporation, which is a well-known group who does this kind of work. In that project, they've been encouraged when it comes to marketing and preparing people for the lottery that they reach out and utilize the local not-for-profits. But it was an open RFP that was sent to everybody.
Thank you.
And I would assume that that will be how it will be handled here as well.
Other questions for the applicant team?
Well, just-
Vice Chair Knuckles.
So, Mr. Levin, at this point, I want to go back to the unit distribution question.
Yes.
At this point, you certainly have some idea, do you not, of what the unit distribution is going to be? And given your sense of what it may well be, how do you respond to the borough president's concerns?
Well, as I said, we haven't come to that conclusion yet. We don't want to prejudge either the market or the financing. This neighborhood has a number of housing needs, and the project has a financial need to survive. And I don't have a percentage of ones, twos, threes, fours. I really don't.
Commissioner Delauze.
I actually wanted to ask about the remediation. Are you applying for the tax credits for the state?
The brownfields?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, are we?
That would certainly change your finances considerably.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
if you can follow up
I
on
don't know.
that.
I mean, the site is, part of the site was remediated by FISA to industrial standards, so we've got to take it the next step. I don't know whether, I mean, that program's changed recently, and I don't know whether we did anything with it back then, but we'll get back to you.
Other questions? Commissioner Levin.
I'll try this again and see how, oh, good. I guess I'm permitted on this one. You know, without deflecting from the importance, I think we all know that the housing issues are the most important aspects of this project. And by asking my next question, I don't mean to diminish that at all. But this is a tremendously large site. If you walk around in that neighborhood, you realize, one thing to look at it on the map, they look kind of stunted blocks, but in their context, this is a really large, significant site. So it's clear that the open space that has been designed and I gather required for this project is going to be a very important amenity not only to the residents but for the streetscape and the passage of public around and through, and so I'm glad to see that it's nailed down as part of the plan. Picking up on the question that I asked at the review session, what happens given the fact that this is such a large site? We often see, though, and it may not be the plan at this particular moment to break it into pieces, but it certainly lends itself to being broken into pieces as the development efforts go along. So how will the comprehensive requirements to develop and maintain the open space be perpetuated should we end up with multiple owners of various pieces here?
There are two potential ways. There may be more, but there are two. One is a homeowners association, which would encompass all of the properties, and they'd all have responsibility to contribute to the maintenance. The other is if the parcels are sold, the restricted declaration covers everybody. So it's an obligation of everybody. So if I was selling you a piece of property, I would want you on the hook for your percentage of that, or else I'm gonna have to do it, or if I don't, then you're in trouble because it affects your site as well. So either it'll be resolved based on the transactions, but the obligation is for all of the properties. And so it's either that or a homeowners association, depending on how the project organizes itself.
Okay, well, so what you've just described, I think maybe even raises my concern, because
Okay.
you've described a condition where we can end up with a tragedy of the commons, where everyone thinks it's important, but no one feels they're responsible. So
Well,
I think by the time we get done with this project, we're gonna need, as a commission, some more assurance that that's not gonna happen here, and that this space
Okay.
will
You
be
know,
developed
before-
and maintained to the standards that you've shown in the pictures.
Well, developing is the easy part of this.
Exactly. 30 years from now,
Developing
when
is
the
easy
trees
because
have
we're not
died
gonna
and the
get-
benches are gone and nobody knows who's responsible, we
No.
need to know.
No, everybody will know who's responsible because there's a declaration that says who's responsible. And the responsibility are the owners of this property, whether there's 1 or 10. That's who's responsible. And if there's a problem with maintenance at some point, that's who is going to be responsible, and that's who is going to be, who's going to get sued or get pulled down on the carpet for not doing what they're supposed to do.
Commissioner Arfon.
We've seen before this commission another application in a manufacturing zone for new manufacturing space. Given the extensive size and interesting geography of an in-place workforce surrounding it, was there any contemplation by your applicant or your client to have some sort of combination of residential conversion and new industrial space within the Pfizer site?
Not a combination. They certainly looked at the notion of doing it as a right, which I advise all my clients to do as of right. But they decided that the housing need of this community was more important. Obviously, you can see from the years that PDC and EDC had this urban renewal plan, and they weren't able to get anyone to come here. And even if you look at the existing building, the old Pfizer building, which is sort of an incubator for basically food startups, having a lot of trouble in totally filling their space, and that was an existing building in excellent condition with a great infrastructure to it. So it was looked at, but this was the preferred development option.
Thanks.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, I'm not a Brooklyn resident, so I'm coming into this late in the game, and I was not here for
We'd
any.
love you to move.
So, I am trying to understand the concerns that were raised. Well, perhaps they weren't raised, but, of the opposition. And, I'm curious sort of what, you mentioned sort of a recent ruling 421A, which I'm not familiar with how that affects the selection of residents, so perhaps you can enlighten me.
Well,
But wait, let me ask the
Okay, sure.
question, because it's
Okay.
all sort of wrapped into one. In light of that, what discretion generally does an owner, whether it's this one or any other owner, have in the selection of who gets affordable units?
The owner has none. The lottery is run by an independent administrating agent that reports to HPD, not to the owner. And there's an online sign-up for if you want to be part of the lottery. And as I said, there are certainly no paucity of people who are looking for this kind of housing. I mean, tens of thousands of people apply. And the administrating agent reviews those applications and decides who qualifies and who doesn't, based on the economic criteria, and they decide. So it's not the owner. The reason I brought up 421A is because I knew the question was going to come up, and it was just reported yesterday that, that the state's new 421A program, which I'm assuming that the applicant's going to apply for, no longer has a requirement that 50% of the affordable units have a preference to the local community board. I don't know how HPD is going to react to that, but as I said, there was a lawsuit filed a while ago saying that that by having that preference, it was discriminating and violated fair housing. So I don't know how that, I don't know. With that, plus the state change, and at least the article yesterday sort of was equivocal as to how the mayor was going to deal with it. So I don't know. But at the moment, as I'm standing here, I'm not sure whether there's still a 50% preference for Community Board 1 or not.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Reade.
Good afternoon. So, Ray, if I understood you
afternoon.
correctly in regards to earlier questioning, in terms of unit breakdown, we're
Yes.
not in a position to provide even an estimate at this time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any idea as to when the developer will be in a position to make that publicly known?
I know they've certainly been thinking about it, and will be before the city council in October.
And you think by that time it may have...
I don't know, but that's the next pressure point.
Okay, true. Regarding the marketing of the market unit, has the developer given any thought to how they intend to go about the marketing of the overall project, not just the affordable units?
I have not been made aware of that, but I will certainly ask them and get back to you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dweck.
Just to follow up, and first I'd like to say that, I haven't heard any opposition basically on the size or context of the project yet, so that's good news from an applicant's perspective. So I think one of the key concerns, there are many concerns, but again, going back to the unit mix and your response regarding 421A and there's no longer a community board preference, a community preference. That being said, that there is no longer a community preference, I mean, I do respect the community board's recommendations, but I think that the applicant should really look at implementing some of the borough president's recommendations, which would be to include studios in their mix. And prior to a vote, I'd certainly like to have some kind of indication, and perhaps you need to hash it out with HPD in the next few weeks. I'd like to have some indication as to what the proposed unit mix is, what we're thinking, something on paper that that would help me clarify my position on the matter.
We'll try.
Thank you.
Commissioner Delos.
I just wanted to follow up on the discussion that you were having with Commissioner Ortiz. Because although it's true that as soon as the lottery is announced, that really there's very little discretion. The discretion is really at this point, right, in determining what option for MIH it happens, and really what the bedroom mix is, and looking at the demographics that exists in a community and ensuring that it is fairly representative of the demographics and is not exclusive to any one group. So,
Sure.
and certainly that's part of our role as well in ensuring that the affordable housing is as accessible as possible. So I will just reiterate Commissioner Dweck's, I think it'd be challenging for a number of us to vote without having more information.
Other questions for the applicant team? Commissioner Cantor.
Hi, Ray.
Hi, could you please ask to see the design discussion? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, if I'm being redundant while I stepped out, please just tell me. I understood your answer with regard to breakdown of units is unavailable.
Yes, sir.
Okay? I understand that we're taking one big parcel and we're breaking it up into a bunch of smaller parcels.
Well, we're not, at this point, we're not, we're creating buildings. The reason that it's 8 buildings is to have, you don't want to have one monster building. And so it's broken up in a way so that you have multiple entrances and you have buildings that hopefully will have a sense of community rather than, you know, a building with 500, 600 units. So they're,
Why didn't you do a large-scale development?
because the as-of-right zoning works, and why go beyond that? The zoning districts are all contextual. They limit the heights of the buildings in terms of a development which goes from 14 down to 5. Working with staff here, it worked. There was no. The only reason to do a large scale is if it's needed, and we're not transferring floor area across streets. We're not waiving height and setback. We're not doing any of the things that a large scale would allow you to do. So this works.
Also gives the opportunity, should he so choose, to sell off parcels. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
But you still haven't made me comfortable, as Commissioner Deleuze is. Once you get an approval, if and when, you're pretty much free to go on your own. You've given us nothing to vote on,
You got it. Yes, sir.
okay?
Yes, that's what as-of-right zoning allows you to do.
Well, if it were all as of right, you wouldn't be here, right?
Well, we're creating that as-of-right situation here. We're creating it with contextual zones, which have height, setback requirements, so that what you see is not 100% what you'll get, but you'll get something very close to this, right? So this is 140 feet. That's as high as you can go. On this end, you're down at 5 stories. You actually could go higher if you wanted, but that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to create some visual impacts here on our buildings. So yeah, there could be little changes, absolutely. But by and large, this is what you're going to get, and the open space in the middle is going to be mandated, which sort of breaks up some of these larger blocks and creates an area with retail along it that connects you from the school to the G-train entrance, and so you're going to get this. And if I change this by 1 story, I don't have to come back here.
All right.
It's for commission efficiency.
I suspect the subsequent commissioners would be very interested. But it still gets back to Ray. There's no product mix on the table.
Yes, absolutely.
I might note that Commissioner Cantor's comment, I believe, was that while being portrayed as of right, it is not as of right under current zoning.
No, of course
It requires a
not.
zoning
But
change.
but the districts that are being created, that's what,
The
unlike a
districts
special.
that are being considered.
Yep.
Thank you for clarifying me.
Yeah.
Other questions for the applicant team? If not, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We will now turn to the speakers in opposition, beginning with Councilmember Antonio Reynoso.
It's okay, Ray. You been good? Good afternoon. Now, I thought it was going to be a good morning. It was a good morning, but I thought I was going to introduce myself with a good morning, but it's a good afternoon. First, to the commissioners, thank you so much for having me here. This process of land use is something that I'm extremely familiar with. I'm not fond of, but over time, especially seeing the process that this application is going through, there's just a glimmer of hope that people matter. I just want to say that, and I hope that the commission's questioning to the applicant speaks to that. So I thank you for that. The first thing I want to say is I want to just address issues that are related to what the applicant was talking about. The need for affordable housing and how bad we need affordable housing, and that we need to do everything we can to get affordable housing into this community. Yet the applicant speaks to limiting the height of the building, right? And limiting and not maximizing the square footage. Why not do that if we need affordable housing? It is actually something that the coalition, who is pro-development in this case, wants. More buildings for more affordable housing. That is something the applicant has not committed to doing just yet. The breakdown of apartments. We know that this community fought last time in the same room and did not get the dismissal of the application, the Broadway Triangle case. We had to go to court, and in court, through fighting, community fighting, using resources in a community, through Brooklyn Legal Services and local organizations, we were able to get a sound statement made by a judge that speaks to the perpetuation of segregation in this area. The fact that HPD did not go about moving through a fair housing argument, a strong fair housing argument, when it came to this case here. And we don't have the breakdown of apartments for this site. Why not do that? Why not prepare for that at this critical juncture in this application process, that they don't have the apartments only speaks to the fact that they absolutely are going to do what we expect them to do, which is build discriminatory housing or continue to perpetuate segregation in the Broadway Triangle. We were promised 400 units of affordable housing in the Broadway Triangle through inclusionary housing. 400 units. It's what made many council members vote for it the last time. That on top of the city-owned sites that were going to give us 300 to 400 units, we would get 300 to 400 units on the private sites through voluntary inclusionary. To this day, so far, 50% of those sites have been built, and we have zero affordable housing for many of those voluntary inclusionary sites. There's zero housing being built for people of color or poor in our community right now on the Broadway Triangle, even with the voluntary inclusionary housing. The as of right, it's unfortunate. I'm going to say it's unfortunate. I think it's disrespectful that he would think that he can come in here and say that it is as of right. What they're trying to say is that after you approve it, or what they expect to be an approval, that they can do whatever they want as of right under the zoning context, and the sizes of the apartments are irrelevant to you. The only thing you need to worry about is that it falls within the as of right context. That's all that you need to worry about. The mix is not important. Fair housing is not something you should concern yourself with. That's what I'm hearing when I hear the applicant speak. The cost of an apartment in Williamsburg, I don't know where the applicant lives or where they've been over the last 10 years, but my community has been displaced by 15,000 Latino residents have been gone. 20% of my community has been moved out or displaced in Williamsburg, specifically because they can't afford rent. Right now, a studio on the waterfront goes for $3,600 a month. A studio on the waterfront. This site is further away from the waterfront. A studio goes for $1,900, and that's an affordable studio. People would kill for that studio in our district. It is not affordable. The market rate is going to be market rate, and they know what they're doing. I need to say that. Also, the average family size in our district is 2.6 is the average family size, which speaks to studios, 1s and 2s, maybe some 3s.
As is our practice, we always allow elected officials to continue, so please do.
Thank you. And I'll try to keep it short because I know I want you guys to ask as many questions as possible so you can understand the outrage of our community. So the last part is the sizes of our families. More than 90% of the applicants that are coming from NYCHA are all asking for 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, with 3 being the least asked for apartment size in our district. Those are all things that are in this case that we've made in regards to the need for building as much affordable housing as possible and keeping the units respective of the community. If there is no community board size then, right? Let's say that the 421A says there's no more preference. No more preference. Then shouldn't we use the average family size in the city of New York to determine what those apartments should be, if not using community board 1s? That would be the only logical answer to that. Then use whatever the city's family size is, of average family size is. The borough president, and I would challenge anyone to speak to Richard Barak's merit-based statements. Richard doesn't play politics. He works specifically to address land use rationale. And he made it. He figured out that there are some issues here without knowing the bedroom breakdown or the apartment sizes breakdown, that this could continue to be a controversial project. Don't allow for the community to have to go back to court to prove that segregation exists in this area. It absolutely exists, and all we continue to do is perpetuate it when we allow applications like this to go through. The last thing I want to say, because I had a written statement, but I'm just going to give that to you, is the Rapsky Group, as a developer. Rheingold is a perfect example of what this context that they say as of right we can build. We lost 88 units of affordable housing after agreeing with the Reade Group that they would build a certain amount of affordable housing. Rapsky purchased the housing, all the commitments made to the community regarding the apartment size and the amount of apartment units was scratched off, and Rapsky did only what was as of right. And what he did was the bare minimum, and what was most financially advantageous to him. He cared nothing of the community. If you approve this project, and let it go to the city council without disapproving it, what we're going to do is they're going to maximize their financial gain and do the bare minimum for the community again. And we can't allow that to happen. Thank you. And I just want to thank you guys. Your questioning was amazing, and it's refreshing, very refreshing. So I'm open to questions, Chair.
Great. Questions for the council member? Yes, Commissioner Efron.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and since I wasn't on the commission during Rheingold, I also appreciate a little bit of background. But as I understand it, that was voluntary inclusionary housing, and this is mandatory inclusionary housing,
Yes.
which, as you know, this commission was very involved with.
Yes,
And
yes.
as I understand MIH, there is an obligation to build.
Yes.
That can't be unscratched or
Right,
scratched out,
right,
as you
exactly.
described it.
We're making progress as a city.
Okay, so a commitment by a developer, regardless of who they are, and I'm a little confused because I didn't understand, and maybe you can clarify this. Is the real estate developer the same as Rheingold? I didn't believe it was.
They're the same people, yes. Rapsky is developing half of the Rheingold site in Bushwick and would be developing this site. So it's the same owner, and his practices, his track record, is what we're basing a lot of our conclusions on. And also, we understand the MIH versus voluntary inclusionary. The thing here is that if the apartment breakdown is not set and it's not legally binding, they're going to do whatever they want. And in this case, we don't trust the applicant to do what is fair through law, through the Fair Housing
Well,
Act.
I just want to say in defense of the commission, MIH is a longer-term project than the initial tenants in a building. And as I understand it, based on experience outside of this room, demographics change.
Yes.
And
Correct. That is true.
I would hope that we can look beyond this moment in time, and I would hope that reasonable people,
Yes.
and I'm making an assumption there, would be able to have a mix that works for 10, 20 years and longer, as opposed to just for this particular demographic moment on all sides of this particular question.
Thank you, Commissioner.
But I wonder whether we have as much say in this matter as you perhaps believe we do. We can recommend unit sizes. But this is a developer that is not looking for subsidies from HPD. The affordable units would be funded privately. And additionally, as I understand it, and I look to my expert fellow commissioner, Commissioner Deleuze, to confirm this, that HPD does have a role once there is a administrative agent to make sure that the process is handled fairly, and it's actually not a responsibility of this commission to do that.
So everything you said is absolutely correct. For my take, I just want you to know that in housing court, Holly Light was asked to go to the stand and stated on the record that they did not consider fair housing fair housing bylaw. They didn't take into account fair housing bylaw, and it was something that they couldn't do, that was illegal, that they were supposed to do. So even HPD being a partner, in being the partner that's supposed to look after or oversight of this project would be concerning. But the thing is, you make my job a lot easier as a council member fighting for this project should you disapprove. The board president just gave us a lot of, and I want to be perfectly honest, that's what I'm trying to do here is the best I can for my community. I am not the council member from which this development is in, but 65% of my community is Community Board 1. So every affordable housing unit that gets built helps keep my people in the district, and I fight heavily to make sure that that happens. I also want to talk about the demographically, like you said, times change. The one thing that has consistently changed is that the residents from Greenpoint and the south side of Williamsburg, which were Polish and Latino, disproportionately Polish and Latino, are the ones that have seen the most displacement in our community across the board. And I just want to put that in perspective to the changing demographics, that yes, the demographics might change to favor larger apartments in one time or another, but so long as we continue these type of processes, we're going to be perpetuating that the same way that this is.
Other Commissioner Deleuze.
Councilmember Reynoso, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having
really
me.
appreciate that. I'm just wondering, let me just talk about specifically the MIH option in this case. And, obviously, they've indicated that they prefer option one. And I'm just wondering, could you talk a little bit more about where you see the greatest need is and whether or not you agree option 1 is the right option? We'll put the unit mix aside for now.
I think this project in itself is something that I can't support even in its inception. At its inception, the community was not allowed to make comments or suggestions as to what they would like to see here. There's been no process by which their input can be heard. As you know, I have, whether it's participatory budgeting or going through a land use rezoning in Bushwick, I've allowed for my community to make those decisions to see what they think is best. And in this case, because that's never been awarded to them, I would say that I can't necessarily say. I can't say.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Commissioner Dwight?
Councilmember Reynoso, thank you for being here. Just to clarify, are you saying that even if the unit mix was changed to in line with the borough president's recommendations, you would still not be in favor of the project overall?
Correct. I think that the work that the borough president did speaks to a lot of the flaws and concerns that we have on this project, but the fact that the community wasn't allowed to express their concerns or what they want to see, whether it be height, open space, transportation issues that we're going through in North Brooklyn as well, those are issues that we've yet to have any input in whatsoever. And when we talk about, it's not about any development, it's responsible development. And we're falling very short of that. I actually am proposing through law, changing the land use process to allow for a
Consultation.
yes, opportunity for the community to really say what they want to say, what they want. Whether the applicants take it into consideration is up to them, but at least the community got to put out some type of report or some type of information that speaks to what they want to see. And that wasn't awarded here, so long as those processes exist, I can't be supportive.
Well, I'll just comment on the flip side. I mean, anybody is welcome to speak from the community. We're an open forum, and they can just sign up and speak, so. And we listen to their concerns. We take it very seriously what they have to say.
I think this commission is, like I said, it's a breath of fresh air to hear you guys and to hear what the questions you're asking. But the history that my community has had with the land use process in the city of New York is one that we can't trust just yet. We got a long way to go before that happens. Again, the displacement of my people is a serious issue in my community. And so long as that continues to happen, any process that the city of New York engages in that does that to the residents of the 34th district, I'm gonna oppose.
Commissioner Ortiz?
Hi, thank you for being here and for being so articulate about the community's concerns. My question relates to, just what we can and can't do, and sort of your thoughts on this. It's a private site, privately owned site. Were they not to come before us, there are certain uses that can go there as of right, as you said.
Yes.
And the process of addressing land use changes is where the community, that's the moment for input. So I guess I appreciate you saying you really want to be part of the process from the very beginning. But that ends up being a challenge on a privately owned site.
Agreed.
So to that, knowing that and recognizing sort of that's maybe not the reality we want, but it's the reality that we have. The design as you see it, what you see here now, I mean, maybe you don't even want to answer this, but are there concerns that you have about the context, the height, that perhaps can reasonably be accommodated? Because this is the moment when we're asking for public input. No.
Any comment that I would make that speaks to legitimizing this project legitimizes the process, and the process itself is the problem. So unfortunately, you're right. We feel very confident in the work that we do as a community, that it's merit-based and it speaks to truths that we're willing to take to court every single time. So just to let you know that we feel we have recourse. We have a place where we can go to get justice. And I apologize. And it doesn't speak to the work that you do. I respect it deeply. But unfortunately, the process by which we approve or move through land use in the city of New York has affected my community in significant ways. And we have to be very careful as to what we legitimize through that process. So I'm sorry. So I apologize.
Other questions for Councilmember Reynoso? Thank you very much for coming
Thank
here
you very
today.
much. God bless you.
As our next speaker, we also have another elected official, Councilmember Levin.
Hello. Hi, Chair Lugo. I don't have any, and members of the commission, I don't have any prepared remarks, but I did want to come down today and just speak a little bit about this proposal and the process and how I'm approaching it. I represent the 33rd District, which is where this proposed development is located. So it's entirely within the confines of the 33rd District. And I've represented that district for the past 7.5 years. And so I have had a significant amount of experience on a lot of the issues that we're looking at today, and have had a number of other private development sites in the Williamsburg community come before the council during my tenure, and so we've looked at a lot of these issues before. So I'd like to start off by saying that, you know, I fully sympathize and understand the frustration of community members when it comes to the lack of affordable housing and what we've seen in terms of displacement of families, of generations of families in the Williamsburg Greenpoint community. When we've seen displacement, secondary displacement, we've seen a lot of redevelopment over the last 15 years. The 2005 Greenpoint Williamsburg waterfront rezoning caused a bullish market in Williamsburg Greenpoint when it comes to real estate. There was a little bit of a pause during the recession, and we saw a lot of projects stalled. They have commenced again, and so as a result, you have a lot of economic pressure being placed on families, whether if it's a non-rent stabilized unit, you know, has been almost impossible and insurmountable challenge to retain that unit as something close to affordable. And I see it all the time. I'm working with constituents that reach out to me that are being evicted and going through the process of trying to find legal assistance for them and retain those units. If they're rent stabilized, there's all types of harassment that goes on. I've seen that as well. I've worked with tenants. One tenant who was rent stabilized tenants of 2 buildings on Kent Avenue across the street from the rezoning on like North 8th Street and Kent Avenue, and the landlord removed the roof from the building for the winter. It's a rent stabilized building with a 101-year-old tenant, rent stabilized tenant. And they still got a certificate of no harassment, by the way, because removing the roof doesn't constitute harassment. So, you know, I understand the frustrations. I see the frustrations firsthand, and we deal with it at our office. I have been dismayed by the tenor of this conversation and this debate as it pertains to this particular development project up to this point, because what I have seen is that frustration being used to go at a project that is in and of itself not part of that conversation. In other words, this is a discrete project. It's a private application, as you said. This is not the 2005 rezoning. It's not the Broadway Triangle rezoning. It is a private application, and as I have seen it, it's presented almost as if it's the latest chapter in a very long novel, and instead it should be and it ought to be, and it's the responsibility of your commission and of the council to look at this on the merits of the application itself, not what happened in 2005, not what happened in 2009, not the developer's other projects. This is an application that should be looked at on its own merit. And I'm not saying it's a perfect project. I'm still looking at it right now, and I'm sure I'm going to have recommendations at the council for how it can be improved. I'm sure that you will have recommendations on how it should be improved. But I think it, like all other private applications, deserves to be weighed by this commission on its own merit, and not just a chapter in a long saga in which, frankly, it's there's a political debate. And this has been drawn into the undertow of a political debate. And I think that that's unfortunate. And so I would just ask that this commission look at the merits of the application. If there are recommendations if there are things that you want to see in that application, reflected in that application as it moves forward through the ULURP process to the council, by all means, I would love to see those recommendations. I would love to work with this commission on implementing those recommendations. But again, I think that it deserves, like any application, to be weighed on its own merit.
Thank you, Councilmember Levin. Would you be willing to take questions? Of course. Commissioner Dweck.
So going back to recommendations, yes, this project should be weighed on its own merit, and I believe from my perspective, certainly it is. So going back to the recommendations, and I know that it's going to come to you at the council, obviously we have a borough president recommendation on the unit mix, and I think it's been voiced, the concerns have been voiced by this commission, by multiple commissioners. So one of the recommendations I would say is I would like to see a unit mix, the allotment of the unit mix written down, put down in paper. And I would like to see some of the BP's recommendations, certainly such as including studios in that mix, included in the mix that the applicant will commit to, whether it be legally binding or not, but certainly in some kind of a commitment, which would allay a lot of concerns on many parties here.
So I'm open to that discussion as well. I haven't fully been able to review all the borough president's recommendations. I look forward to doing that, throughout the rest of the summer and into the fall. I would point to there are developments. So within the South Williamsburg area, there have been successful developments that are private developments that have accommodated various parts of the community's needs, various demographic aspects of the community's needs. So I would look at something like Schaefer, which was developed about 15, 18 years ago, where if you go to Schaefer today, it is, now that's a 40% affordable development. That was on city-owned land, but it was developed by a private applicant. It was Don Kaposha's group that developed it back then. That is a mixture of family-sized units, of smaller units. If you go there today, and by all means, I think everyone should go there, it is, it's economically diverse, it is racially diverse. There are Hasidic families living on the same floor as Latino families, living on the same floor as African-American families. And everybody is, I always say that, nothing brings a community together like living on the same floor and having to borrow flour or sugar or, from their neighbor, when they run out and it's 10 o'clock and they need to make, lunch for their kids the next day. So, an integrated development, I think, is achievable, and you need look no further than Schaefer Landing.
Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Delauze.
Councilmember Levin, I just want to say thanks for coming. I appreciate that. And, I appreciate that, as you said, each project needs to be weighed in its, its own merit. I think the context and the history is important. And I think you're right. Oftentimes people can project a lot of concerns, obviously very legitimate concerns about fears of displacement, histories of discrimination. And I think that your point about that an integrated development is achievable is true. I think the challenge is we're missing information to know if that actually can happen. And so I think, the commission's being asked to weigh something, and in my mind, ensuring that projects can further fair housing should be part of what we look at in the land use process. I mean, obviously, we took a lot of time not too long ago to look at mandatory inclusionary housing to ensure that we have an economically diverse city. And in my mind, this is part of thinking about that role very, very seriously.
And I think that there's a role when it comes to MIH for HPD as it oversees the affordable component of any development. And I know that the affordable component needs to mirror the market component of any development in an MIH project. And so in terms of unit size breakdown. And I would think that HPD would have some role. I actually called HPD this morning and I'm talking about, because it's not going to be a financed HPD project, and it's obviously not on city-owned land. But as an MIH project, it's possible that there is some jurisdiction with HPD. But that's I don't know. You might know better than I would.
That's a very good point, Councilmember. We'll actually bring back to the Commission's review session on this information about the regulatory agreements that HPD enters into for MIH projects and what influence they can then have on the affordable unit size mix. Yes, please continue.
If I might, though, I mean, obviously HPD should speak for themselves, but I mean, all of it is about project feasibility, and that was brought up by the development team, the need for the project to be feasible. And so, as you said, HPD's role may come later than many of the community's concerns can be addressed. And so I think it would be helpful to, let's not end up with another lawsuit, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Commissioner?
One other thing that I would say is that, we've gone now through, and some of you have been on the commission when we looked at Domino the first time, when we looked at Domino the second time, and I think that it's fair to look at. I mean, yes, there is a context. That context includes all of the developments that have gone through this commission, at least during my tenure. So when we look at Rose Plaza on the River, or we look at either iteration of Domino. We just did the rezoning at Rose Castle, which was in a different community board, but nearby, and that was a process that at the end everybody found satisfactory. The community board voted in favor. The commission obviously voted it out, and we at the council voted it out, and it was, I think, to everybody's satisfaction. And that was just a couple of months ago. One other thing, just obviously as you know, but the community board voted on this proposal and voted in favor. They carefully considered it, and I was there for the debate, and it was an extensive debate, and it was at times extremely emotional. I was not thrilled that I thought that there was some misinformation that was thrown out there during the course of the debate. I think one challenge, frankly, is that sometimes accurate information is bundled in with inaccurate information and thrown out there as a single package, and sometimes it's hard to break it out as to what's true and what's not. And so that happened at this community board debate, and I thought that was very unfortunate. But I think it's important to look clear-eyed at a proposal and see what's in there and what's not in there.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi. Earlier, Commissioner Levin raised a concern about how we ensure long-term maintenance of the public space, particularly if, there's nothing to prevent this from being split up and owned by, a variety of owners, as opposed to a single owner who has more of an interest in maintaining that. You asked about what we'd like to see. I think, much more clarity around what mechanisms are set up and embedded within, any agreements, ownership agreements that would require the maintenance of the space. And I think about shopping centers where it's very normal to have a common area maintenance charge that is required and incorporated into every single lease that then goes towards the maintenance of common area space, and that's managed by a single entity. I don't know what the corollary of that is for a residential project like this, but certainly it's a model, and it's something we'd like to see. I personally would like to see described in a little more detail. We don't want 20 years to go by and have something we're not proud of.
Absolutely. I think that's absolutely fair. And as the projects, as development projects go through the ULURP process and things, issues like this become clearer. We've worked with city planning at the council and worked on restrictive decks or whatever mechanism there may be to ensure voluntary long-term agreements to ensure that things like this are addressed in the long term. Are right, and run with the deed.
Yeah, thank you.
More questions for Councilmember Levin? Thank you
for the
very much for
opportunity.
coming.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
We will now continue with a number of speakers in opposition. We'll go to speakers in favor, return to speakers in opposition, return to speakers in favor. Our first speaker in opposition is Sonia Goularda.
I'd like to clarify that that's opposition with amendments we would like to see. So
Certainly.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon regarding the FISA sites rezoning. My name is Sonia Ortiz Gallardo, and I'm Director of Parent Engagement and Community Outreach at Beginning with Children Foundation, serving students in Williamsburg, Bed-Stuy, and throughout Brooklyn. As the founding principal of the first Beginning with Children school over 25 years ago at one of the FISA sites, I have been involved in education in the Williamsburg community since 1992. Beginning with Children Charter School 2, like the original school, is located at 11 Bartlett Street, directly across the street from the sites proposed to be rezoned. This school was recently approved to grow from K-5 to a much-needed middle school. Our site includes the school building, which fronts on Bartlett Street, as well as a playground, which fronts on Cherry Street. Our school does not have an indoor gymnasium. The play yard is the only area that can accommodate exercise, which we know is critical to our students' physical development and educational attainment. Our neighborhood lacks access to parkland today. This development should include, if approved, enhanced open space that is accessible to the entire community and complements existing recreation areas. It is crucial, if a large-scale development is approved on the neighboring lots, our school community is protected from truck traffic, emissions, dust, noise, and other adverse construction impacts. Our parents are concerned about safety precautions when doing construction on an environmentally compromised site. For the safety of the students in our school and others nearby, we believe that an environmental monitoring system providing real-time information to our community is essential. In addition, there is already limited space for parking, student drop-off, and loading. Accommodations should be made to ensure that if the project is approved, there is adequate room for both our school's parking and busing needs during and after the project. Furthermore, as a community-based organization working to increase educational opportunities for local families for more than 25 years, we have seen rapid changes in the demographics of the neighborhoods we serve. Our students are 68% Latino, 23% English language learners, and 93% qualify for free or reduced lunch. And they have achieved remarkable success. Nearly 100% graduate high school on time and are accepted to college. As our neighborhood continues to be a prime target for high-end residential construction, it is important to our school community that our families are able to remain and thrive in Williamsburg in close proximity to our school and alumni programs. Increasing rents and the loss of good jobs in the neighborhood have strained many of our local families. To that end, Beginning with Children supports the creation of a comprehensive community planning framework for the entire Broadway Triangle area.
If I could ask you to wrap up, I should have said at the beginning of the remarks, given the very large number of speakers that we have,
fine.
we'll hold
No,
it to
I
3
agree.
minutes, but
Yeah.
certainly open it up to questioning Ms. Ortiz-Gulardo. Yes, Commissioner Efron.
I can't resist. Congratulations on your graduation rates.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
We're very proud of it also.
With good reason.
Thank you for listening to us.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Delauze.
If I might, the first thing that you raised was enhanced open space. And obviously, the project proposal does include passive open space. Is that something that would meet your needs or not so much?
Well, the way I understand it, the open space is more like corridors. And I don't think that really is sufficient for a community. And from what I have seen in the neighborhood, the open space in other projects that exist in the community really are not open space. They're just walkways that people walk. If that is the case, then that is not going to be sufficient for our community. And we don't have any parkland at all.
Other commissioners?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time. Our next speaker in opposition is Martin Needleman. Okay, thanks very much for letting me know. And our next speaker in opposition is Robert Camacho.
Like your bell. I was a fighter. Every time I heard a bell, it reminded me of to wait until the referee stops the fight, because not I'll keep fighting. And that's what I'm going to keep doing. But my name is, I don't write nothing. Everything I write is from the heart. I'm a member of Bushwick. Been in Bushwick all my life, 57 years. My grandmother, 101, still in Bushwick. Guess her income? $600 a month, just on a little check. That's what these guys doing. They're disenfranchising our seniors. They're taking away our homes. They're taking what we fought for and what we believe for. And Bushwick is family-oriented. This developer came to see before, which I am a member. I'm not representing, I'm a community board, I'm a resident. To us and promised us 20% affordable housing, 10% for seniors, We changed the zoning. From the Rango site to M1, we changed it to residential. Guess what he did, which I know you know what he did. Turned around and sold it to another developer. And then the developer says, which he represents, says, guess what? The deal wasn't with me. You know, he played the dice. You know, when you play the dice, you get a 7, you don't win. Somebody else wins. And he took it from us. This guy's like cancer. He's going to CB1. Came to CB4, ate us up, cancer spreads. He's going to spread around. They're not from the community. They don't help the community. Everything is pocket and greed. It's not for me. My daughter can't afford to live in Bushwick because she lived there 32 years. She lives in Staten Island, paying $1,500 rent because she makes $2 more than affordable housing. My grandson is 12 years old. He says, Dad, I want Mom to get an apartment in the house. Your mother can't afford to live there, and she was born and raised here. Is that fair? Is that fair to you guys, to us, that we fought when the blackout was there? Nobody wanted us. When the houses were burning in Bushwick, nobody wanted us. Now the developer comes, everybody wants to run to Bushwick. $2,000 rent, $3,000 rent, $4,000 rent. It ain't me. It's them yuppies that are coming with Starbucks coffee and their phone, and they don't even talk to us anymore. I own a home. I ain't going nowhere. I got a 2-family home. You ain't building up in my house because I'm not going to allow you to, and I'm not selling it. Bushwick is not for sale. Bushwick, Williamsburg, what happens to them happens to us. Woodhall takes 4 cash basement areas, CB4, CB1, and all the other communities. We got to get together and you got to help us. We need your help. You see the belt? It's a hard fight. I was a fighter for a long time, and I'm going to continue fighting because I'm losing and my kids are moving away. I can't make my kids stay in my neighborhood. They can't afford to live here. They're moving us away. You guys are teaching our kids 22, 29, 34, and 32 to be family oriented, to create and move out.
Thank you.
But I can't push my son out.
Thank you for your passion, and would you mind waiting?
Sure.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Camacho?
I don't think they do.
I actually would want to say something, which is how fortunate you are to have a 101-year-old abuelita. I think many of us would wish we did.
It's getting sad because she looks around and our people are no longer there.
Thank you,
You
Mr.
open the
Camacho.
window and they're not there no more. And the people that are there are not interested in us. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker in opposition is Carlos Santiago. Is Mr. Santiago here? Okay, our next speaker in opposition is Juan Ramos.
Juan is no longer here.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker in opposition is Denise Jennings Houston. You're here. Thank you for being here.
I spent most of the morning trying to construct something that I was going to read, but when the Councilman Reynoso came up, I mean, I can't say it any more eloquently than he did. I remember him because he started out as a community organizer. So to watch him grow up, I'm 61, to watch him grow up and to become a councilman has been very good for me and for the community. So instead, I'm just going to try to speak to the spirit rather than the letter of the law. I know the last Councilman Levin was here, and he mentioned at some point that the community board had approved the plan, but it wasn't unanimous. So let's don't forget, councils and commissions are made up of individuals. It wasn't like everybody agreed. There was pros and there were cons. So in a way, I don't think he meant it, but it's a little disingenuous to say, oh, it was approved. It was not unanimously. So that's number one. The second thing would be when we talk about affordable, it's not affordable. If you go into a poor or low-income working class community and you build there, and it's not at a level where the people are making the salary, you can't say it's affordable. We don't want affordable. We want fair and equitable. I'm a product of NYCHA houses. I grew up in Williamsburg when it was called projects, which they are. They're not houses. And I'm going to end with a small little poem that says, projects are not houses. But my mom, who's 85, she made 85, she still lives there. She pays $1,041 for the same square footage that she had 57 years ago. Is that fair? No, it's not. Is it affordable? Maybe. So we come here for change. In 1968, you had the Civil Rights Act / the Fair Housing Act, which allowed us to begin to have the conversation. So when you say things like, well, it's really not ours, when I pass that homeless person that at that moment maybe I cannot impact in the way that I would like, I still know it's a homeless person and I still have to be connected to it. I can't say, well, that's not my problem. That is my problem. And when we come here to you all, is to say it's our problem. Like he said, please help us in any way that you can. Please help us.
Thank you,
So
Ms.
like I would
Jennings
like to
Houston.
end with, it's only a minute, believe me, I write short poems. And this
If I
one
could-
says, please, I don't want to be.
Would you be able to submit it, please? We do have a very large number of other
Yes,
speakers
yes,
in
okay,
opposition.
Okay, it just says projects. They call them houses, these tiny rectangles, dominoes stacked on all sides, where elevator tubes shoot like ladders, move crowds in a small place, bodies pressed against squares. And they call them houses, these tiny dungeons rocketing sky, untouched by trees or sun swinging low. Let's get one thing straight. Projects are not houses, but are a cold shoulder turned, robber of a right to attend the land given by God and belonging to no one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings Houston. Would you be willing to wait for a moment in the event there are questions? No? Okay, thank you. I think your poem left us speechless. Thank you. Our next speaker in opposition is Mike Bradley. Okay, the next speaker who has signed up is William. Oh, he's coming over, great. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Mike Bradley, and I'm a member of SEIU 32BJ. I'm here today testifying on behalf of over 1,000 32BJ members who live or work in residential buildings in the Williamsburg area. 32BJ represents over 80,000 building service workers in New York City, including workers in residential buildings like the one being proposed at the Pfizer site. Where 32BJ represents workers, building service jobs have long offered New Yorkers wages and benefits that allow workers and their families to live, work, and succeed in this city. Unfortunately, while most of the developers in the city ensure service workers at their buildings have good jobs, some developers have adopted a low-road business model. The Raspy Group is one of these developers. We are here today to say this project should not move forward without a clear demonstration that the Raspy Group has addressed the record of egregious behavior that has negatively impacted workers, tenants, and communities surrounding their developments. It's important that the City Planning Commission reject this proposal. We have to uphold high standards for workers and tenants in the city, and the developer bringing this proposal has a track record that should raise concerns. Entities affiliated with the Raspy Group have engaged in wage theft by violating prevailing wage laws. Last year, an investigation by ProPublica found that tenants in a building owned by a Raspy Group affiliate were subjected to a scheme to dodge the rent stabilization requirements attached to the 421A tax abatement the building received. The Raspy Group has refused to honor a community benefits agreement signed by the former developer of a site Raspy purchased since 2010. Since 2010, a Raspy Group affiliated contractor, HSD Construction, has been fined over $20,000 for failing multiple OSHA inspections. The City Planning Commission should ensure that this project does not move forward unless they see concrete evidence that the developer and its affiliates have changed their behavior. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
William Fuller.
Good afternoon. My name is William Fuller. I live in Brooklyn. I have been a member of 32BJ for 10 years. I am here today because of my concern about the Raspy Group expanding footprint in our community mean building service like me. My union job had paid me a family situation, a wage, and provide great health benefit, retirement benefit for me and my family. But I know that in new buildings throughout Brooklyn, where developers have not committed to create high-quality service jobs, workers with same job as me, including workers at Rapsky Fitted Building, have often been paid $12 to $13 an hour and given no meaningful benefits. According to the illustrate, last year, this was even true in Rapsky Fitted Building that was required to pay workers the prevailing wage because of the receiving a 421A as tax exempt. The low wages threaten to bring down wages across the entire building service industry. They are a threat to job security of workers like me. This is a bad for the community. These buildings are in the community where the workers live. Over 1,300 members of the community have signed a petition saying it is important that developers on this site commit and create good jobs and affordable housing. I am calling on the City Planning Commission to disapprove this applicant unless the Rafferty Group provide concrete evidence that the company and its affiliates have changed their practice.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Questions? Thank you, sir. Boris Santos? Boris is coming, I think.
Run, Forrest, run, don't come, run. Good afternoon, everyone. So I just have some prepared remarks that I'd like to read. Some of you may know in the audience, know me as the organizing work that I do with Antonio Reynoso. First and foremost, I would like to address that and choose to step away from that role and speak to you and the commission as a former 18-year resident of Los Sures, Williamsburg. The current elected representative in which this rezoning falls under has been quoted as stating before, we should judge this project by its merits. I believe that in assessing whether or not this particular rezoning is in the best interest of not only CB1, but CB3 and CB4, we must judge the project not only on the provided specs, but on the context the community finds itself in. Between the years of 2000 and 2014, the Latino population of Williamsburg Southside has decreased by 34%. This according to 7 census tracts. Much of this can and should be attributed to the 2005 Williamsburg waterfront rezoning that introduced Williamsburg to countless amounts of luxurious waterfront housing and led to skyrocketing costs of rent. Families such as mine were pressured out to move from their homes, from their community, and most importantly, from the place they love and feel comfortable in. Today, if you happen to be a low-income New Yorker looking for somewhere to move, Williamsburg is not an option, considering that most of it is developed and you could hardly find vacant land, let alone affordable housing. The history and current state of Community District 1 can therefore be summarized as being one where land is proven to be scarce and where displacement has taken its course due to market pressure. The best housing policy for CD1 is one in which the production of affordable housing should be maximized in order to further offset displacement. A current policy of MIH, 20 to 30% affordability, is not enough in a community that has seen a higher percentage of black and brown people displaced. It is time for developers such as Rapsky to do more than the bare minimum of what the law has to offer. Unfortunately, the rezoning that is being considered today will lead to further displacement of black and brown people instead of the job placement of them, which is the current existing zoning context of manufacturing. It will lead to possibly more segregation in the Broadway Triangle instead of inclusive housing. And lastly, it will suppress the voices of activists, advocates, and attorneys that are calling for a comprehensive plan on the Broadway Triangle. Asking for more affordable housing is not unrealistic. It is not radical either. In fact, it is very much aligned with the recommendations of the borough president, the Brooklyn borough president. And this is one of the recommendations which I believe you all have failed and evaded, which is more affordability. You've addressed the mixture and bedroom concept. In his recommendation, the borough president states that developer is building higher than the minimum zoning text that would trigger MIH, which is R7A. in some areas of its development, right? It'll be R7D in some areas, R8A. By doing this, the developer yields more profit, and the borough president goes on to recommend including more affordable housing. In addition to these important details, the community and orgs going against this project know that providing affordable housing is an achievable goal. For example, the Office of Councilmember Reynoso is currently supporting the rezoning of developers in the site of 349 Saddam and 1080 Willoughby, which will expand manufacturing and provide 100% affordable housing. So we're just not a party of no in a Councilmember Reynoso's office, or in my belief as well. So
Thank you, Mr. Santos. Thank you. Questions? Commissioner De La Hoz.
So, Mr. Santos, you seem to have two very concrete requests. One is to maximize the total FAR that on the site, which would then increase the total number of affordable units, minimally under MIH, and then for the developer to go beyond the 25% on MIH and have a greater percentage of the units be affordable.
correct.
Do you have a particular target number?
I do not have a particular target number, and I will leave that up to the community to decide. And that's why it's very important when the council member states, revising the land use process. This is something that would have been determined by the community ahead of time prior to this, prior to being at this point in history.
Thank you.
All right.
Other questions for Mr. Santos? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We will now turn back to those in favor. The next speaker is Sarah Bickel. Sarah Bickel. She would be followed by Christopher Singleton, who will be followed by Speak, Ms. Bickel. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm humbled to speak to you today, Honorable Commissioners. and thank-
Speak into the mic, please. Thank you.
Tall for that. I'm humbled to speak to you today, Honorable Commissioners, and thanks for giving me a chance to express our situations and why we urgently ask that the rezoning of the former Pfizer properties should be approved. So my name is Sarah Bickel. You hear me? My name is Sarah Bickel, and I'm a lifelong Williamsburg resident and raised here my family of 7 children. In the recent years, I married off 2 of them, which we struggled to find apartments. So one of them got a 1-bedroom apartment, paying most of their income for the rent, and they have 2 babies already. And the second one had to settle in a basement, paying top dollar, barely affording it. And I see on a daily basis the situation where they just grab the 2 kids, come spend the day with me, in my house, in my kitchen. It's unbearable for them, for me, for the other kids in the house. But as a mother, this is what we need to do. The shortage of housing, obviously, is the problem. My parents, elderly, sick people, would love to move into me for weekends and holidays, but we can't just triple up. So a bigger apartment will definitely be able to accommodate all of this. So the current application before you for the Pfizer development will result in the largest project in our neighborhood and will significantly alleviate the shortage of apartments. More important, it calls for 287 affordable apartments, which is nice, and this will help many couples, like my kids, to afford a decent apartment. So I beg this commission to approve this plan because it's very critical to alleviate the current situation. We are anxious for relief, and we hope that it will be granted through greenlighting this major development to go ahead. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKell. Questions from the commission? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker in support is Christopher Singleton. Okay. Thank you. Our next speaker is Brookie Schwartz.
Hi, I'm Brookie Schwartz. I'm involved in assisting many community residents by consulting them regarding their social services needs. I interact with hundreds of clients and share with them their family situations. I find most of the times the biggest burden upon them is housing. They have large families and there's no big apartments for the growing families. And even the tiny apartments are barely affordable. From the beginning of the century, housing was a housing boom, which alleviated the problem for a while. But unfortunately, very few of them were rezoned since then, and developments slowed. This led to sky-high rocketing rent. Families with 2 incomes can barely afford the rent. Apartments, oftentimes, 3 of the week's wages can barely meet their monthly rent. I can tell from my own experience. I have a family of 6 children, married, and have growing families. They struggle with apartments and can barely afford even their tiny apartments. While interacting with the other clients, I see how the high rents, overcrowded apartments virtually damage the families, and their families are getting totally destroyed. It impacts the healthy development of the education and the children. When parents worry about this month's rent and last month's rents, it deprives them from a healthy development and the love that they so much deserve. The proposed Pfizer department will increase the availability and ease the tremendous needs, which is so imperative for the community. Hence, I appeal, please accept this application so we can proceed and complete this project without further delay. To conclude, I thank the Commission for listening to the voice of the people and take the pleas and the struggles of the people in the override conditions. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Reade. Commissioner Reade.
Yeah, Ms. Reade,
Yeah.
thank you for coming and thank you for your testimony. The representative for the developer, in presenting to us, has indicated that they have not made public a unit mix in terms of the number of large-sized units or anything like that. Have anyone shared with you that there will be large units in this?
No, they don't know.
Development?
I don't know what there is. I'm
Okay.
asking you to please include large apartments.
Okay, we don't have purview on the size of the units. I was just curious whether or not
I have
you
no
have any
idea, and I'm
information
just
we don't
asking,
have.
I know the needs, and I'm asking to please have them include large
I
apartments.
appreciate the need.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. Our next speaker in support is Chaya Freed.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Chaya Freed. I live in Williamsburg. It's an honor for me to be here today to meet and support the residential Pfizer development. I'm going to do my best to hold your attention until my very last word. There's that famous quote, things that are known, things that are unknown, and there are doors in between. That's why I'm here, to open the door of action and opportunity. What would you do if you were forced to leave your native city and move abroad to the unknown? You don't know where you're going to. Of course, this would arouse lots of confusion and distress to you and your family. We all want to live in Williamsburg. That's a close-knit community for us, and that's where we were raised with passion and care. Williamsburg is a place that is meaningful to our community. Williamsburg is a place where we want to live and raise our children. It's a place that is our comfort zone, and that's where we want to live. We can't even think of leaving it behind. That's why I'm here to support this development. Dear commissioners, I really appreciate you listening to me. And we've come here to spend our precious time here and to assure that you will act on our behalf and make Williamsburg a place where we can ultimately remain and establishing residential zoning all across Williamsburg. I thank you in advance for your positive feedback, and I'm confident you won't disappoint us.
Thank you, Ms. Freed, and you did keep our attention. Questions? Thank you. Our next speaker in support is Lori Raphael.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, staff, and guests. I'm Lori Raphael, Vice President at Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. and staff liaison for the Brooklyn Chamber's Real Estate and Development Committee. I'm delivering testimony on behalf of Andrew Hone, the President and CEO of the Brooklyn Chamber. With over 2,100 active members, the Brooklyn Chamber is the largest chamber of commerce in New York State. We promote economic development across the borough, as well as advocate on behalf of our member businesses. The Brooklyn Alliance is the not-for-profit economic development affiliate of the Brooklyn Chamber, which works to address the needs of businesses through direct assistance programs. We respectfully urge that you lend your formal support for the development proposed by Harrison Realty at 200 Harrison Avenue. As you are aware, the project, which at last would revitalize a former Pfizer site that has sat vacant for decades, recently won the approval of Community Board 1. As the leading voice of Brooklyn's business community, we see this project as a tremendous opportunity to address one of the greatest obstacles to doing business in the borough, finding available commercial and affordable residential space. This project will help satisfy this demand with its proposed 1,146 residential units and 64,000 square feet of neighborhood retail. When completed, this project will add nearly 300 much-needed affordable apartments to Brooklyn's housing stock. With demand for housing for low-income New Yorkers on the rise in Brooklyn, this is a chance to help fulfill the city's ambitious vision to create more affordable housing, an objective that's critical to our borough's continued growth and vitality. Our members tell us repeatedly that our talented, diverse workforce is one of the key factors in their decision to do business here. We must continue to make every effort to ensure Brooklyn remains a place where the workforce can afford to live. The neighborhood retail component will be a welcome addition for businesses looking to relocate and/or expand as well. This will not only offer community residents new shopping options, but also will create local job opportunity together with the hundreds of construction jobs that this project will create. On behalf of the members of the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, we ask that you support this project, which will support our collective goal of a strong, vibrant Brooklyn. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Ms. Raphael. Questions? Thanks. Our next speaker in support is Rabbi David Niederman.
Good afternoon, Madam Commissioner, Chair, and Commissioners. I really thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. It was almost taken away. It has been on 2 other occasions, but thank you for making sure that our voice could be heard. My name is Rabbi David Niederman. I'm the Executive Director of the United Jewish Organizations of Williamsburg. And I'm also a member of the Community Board Number 1 and its Land Use Committee. For the respect of the process, for the respect of the Community Board, who worked so hard, I must object to what was said. 4 times, opportunities were given at the local community board level in order for people to come and listen to it. It was before the project started the ULUP process, because they wanted to hear the input. You are dealing with a developer that's not coming from someplace else, from the planet. The developer is local. The developer has developed local developments, okay? And he wants to hear what the community has to say. I am also a small developer, and I'm proud the councilman just invoked a project that I was here testifying many years ago, the Schaefer project. The UJO was the sponsor. UJO put in the developer's fee to make sure that the project is 40%, in addition to the money that came in, the land and other type of subsidies. And look at that project, what the UJO has. Look at it, and I say this is going to be a mirror. You will have Latino, African Americans, and Hasidic community members living and working together. This has been in a project. I have a joint venture with Las Suras 907 Drinks. I have another project, which is 68 units, inclusionary project, which is all minorities. And this is going to be here as well. And you know why? Because fortunately, the mayor had the vision of ensuring affordable housing at the MIH. You worked so hard to get that done. And that is the result. That has been the result in Schaefer because HPD not only oversees the lottery, you know that HPD is actually sitting over there. It goes into a lockbox, and then all of the applications are opened in the presence of community, of HPD, and whoever is the administrating agent can't select it. But he has to go in line that is established and kept by the HPD a lot, and goes through and says, okay, we want to do that. And it cannot be done. It has to go to HPD for approval before it's granted.
Thank you, Rabbi Niederman. Any questions from the commission? Thank you very much for coming.
Not a minute.
Our next speaker in support is Robert Munoz. Okay, who appears not to be here. Our next speaker in support is John Vieta.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Vieira. I represent Sunshine of East Coast, a subcontractor that performs work in the Brooklyn, Queens, mostly in Brooklyn, Queens, maybe 80% of our work. And we are an equal opportunity employer. This, I must say, and I'm very proud of it. We require projects like this, 200 hours in area, as we do require a lot of projects so we can maintain the workforce that we do carry. Right now, we started once with 30 men, now we're 50, 70, we're up to 100. With projects like this, it affords us the opportunity to employ more people, a greater workforce, and also affords us the opportunity to grow our company. I'm very respectful and glad to hear about that there's 287 affordable housing units, because many of our employees that do live in the Brooklyn, Queens area have very difficult times finding housing, affordable housing. I well know that they double up and triple up. There are 4, 5, 6, 7 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. Very difficult for them. And I'm very proud to say that over the last 35 years, I began working in Brooklyn, in the Bushwick area, doing Section 8 houses. I was very fortunate to be able to do about 250 houses, and that's what got me started. So I'm very glad to hear this, and hope this all works out with everyone. And I'll make this work. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for bringing a business owner's perspective to the conversation. Questions? Yes, Commissioner Delauze.
I appreciate you coming, and since in the earlier part of the presentation when during the development project was laid out, there was a request from the community board that the developers said that they were going to honor about 25% of local hiring, minority, women-owned. So as a sub, is that something that you would be contributing to on their behalf?
What we do by default in itself, being the type of work that we do, I'd say 85% of our workforce is of minority origin. And also, I'm going to say right about now, I don't have the exact amount, but right now, currently, our workforce in the Brooklyn and Bronx and Queens residents has increased tremendously because we need the workforce. Very proud to say that we just recently hired our first African-American woman. She's wonderful. She's working very well with us on the project. But, you know, it's unfortunate she's the first and only one. You know, I got it out of 100 people. But in general, I can say this, I'm doing this a long time, and it's nice to see some changes, because 35 years ago, the demographics of Bushwick, Brooklyn were quite different than they are now. And things change, and hopefully for the better, in general, for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Veda. Our next speaker in support is Josie Cruz. Oh, Jose Cruz, I'm sorry.
Okay, don't worry about it. I didn't put the comma after the E, so that's why. Today I'm here to support the relocating zoning, the zoning relocation, naming, because it creates a lot of jobs. There's construction jobs, probably over 600 jobs in construction, electricity, electricians, plumbers. It creates doorman positions, it creates superintendents, it creates nannies. You know, if it's a residential building, there's going to be nannies there. There's going to be small home mom and pops companies that could just start developing. It could be a cleaning agency, it could be whatever it is, but there's a possibility. Right now, we have nothing. Right now, it's a lot. Right now, there's no jobs. And that's what we have to see. And yes, there's affordable housing. There's a little bit of everything. There's commercial space. There's no commercial space right now. So what? It's a commercial space, but it's not developing any money. There's no jobs. No one lives there. It's not safe. Prostitution was just there, what, 10 years ago? So Williamsburg is changing. Bushwick is changing. New York is changing. I was raised in Harlem. I got relocated. I moved on. It's not that hard. People can move on. People could develop. People could, take the hit and raise up again. But we're not relocating anyone. This is an empty lot we're talking about. It's an empty lot, guys. Let's develop something here. Let's create jobs. Let's get housing, and let's get moving. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Questions? Thank you for coming.
No worries.
Our next speaker in support is David P.
How are you today, guys? My name is David. I've been living in Bed-Stuy, Williamsburg area for the last 15, 20 years. And developments like this are the reason I have a job. So I support this because of that. And of course, they'll have lottery for the housing as well. I support that as well. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Succinct and effective. We will now return to speakers in opposition. Ron Schiffman.
He was here.
He was here.
Okay, then Kevin Worthington. Okay, those were the last two speakers in opposition that were signed up. I will now return to speakers in support. Diana Ortiz.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here in favor of the project. I personally live in Queens. I do work in the area of Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Brunswick, North 9, Kent Avenue. Sadly, Queens has become an area where you see a lot of drug use, a lot of criminal history, and I also spend over 4 hours a day coming back and forth from Queens to Brooklyn to be able to get to my job. I'm a single mother. I have an 11-year-old, and I would love to be able to live in the place where I work and be able to spend those 4 hours or 3 hours a day with her, because as a single mother, it's a really hard job, and the minute I spend with her is really worth it. So I'm really in favor of the project. Thank you.
And thank you, in light of being a mother and with that commute, for taking the time to participate.
Thank you very much.
Questions? Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. Our next speaker in support is Robert Schmidt.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Schmidt. I'm president of United Panel Technologies. United Panel Technologies is based in New York. We specialize in design, fabrication, and installation of building exteriors. I support the project and would like to ask the City Planning Commission to do the same. Our work relies on projects like this one and for this property. The new development planned on this empty site will create over 1,100 new apartments and will mean work for a lot of companies and people in the surrounding area. The project means not only job security for our workers, it means companies like mine and many others can hire new workers. There are a lot of people who are looking for good quality work, and we can use every job we can get. So please support this project and help create new jobs and expand prosperity to the people of Brooklyn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Questions? Thanks. Our next speaker in support is Stephanie Marazzi.
Good afternoon. I'm a member of the development team, and I don't have any testimony, so I'm just here for questions if there are any.
Questions for Ms. Marazzi? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker in support is Hassani Jones. Okay, oh, he's coming, great. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hassani Jones. I'm a former resident of the Williamsburg area. I lived there for about 20 years. I went to elementary school and high school, not to mention, I guess you could say, college in St. Francis. I'm for this development for the simple fact that I would like an opportunity to move back into the neighborhood that I grew up in. Since my family moved out, as you guys know, it's prices over there to come back are very high, and I can't afford that. I have a daughter of my own who's about going to be 10 next month, and we come down here. We visit her cousins, and she always talks about how she would love to come back over to the same neighborhood that I grew up in, how she would like to come back and stay with her cousins who were fortunate enough not to leave the neighborhood. But unfortunately, without a development like this, I can't afford to come back here. I work for a living. I consider myself fairly well educated, but I still at this point do not make the amount of money that $4,000 to $5,000 for an apartment in Williamsburg. So that is why I'm for the development.
Thank you for taking the time to come here, Mr. Jones. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker in support is Reade Deutsch.
Honorable Commissioner and all those assembled in this room. My name is Reade Deutsch, and I am a mother for a large-sized family. I have been living in Williamsburg for the past 19 years with my growing family. I have been struggling with housing conditions as my family was getting larger with no options of affordable housing. My children are sleeping doubled up. Some of my friends have to put their children to sleep in their laundry room. And there are some parents that need to eliminate bath for their children because the bathtub is being used for storage. I fully support this Pfizer housing project, and I ask the city to please do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deutsch. Questions? Thanks. Our next speaker in support is Jose Hernandez. Okay. Our next speaker in support is Rafael Rabinovitz. Mr. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Jose Hernandez, and I was born and raised in Williamsburg my whole life. Worked in the neighborhood over 20 years, and I'm for the Pfizer rezoning for numerous reasons. One, as he said, is an empty lot. There's 2 square blocks of hideous machines. I have to walk through there every night. There's hundreds of rats through there. There's abandoned vehicles, burned down vehicles. It's not safe. There's vandalism. There's always robberies, God forbid, there's rapes. There's all different kind of things in that neighborhood. 2, it will bring so many homes to the neighborhood. I work so hard, and I work sometimes over 18, 20 hours a day so I can afford to live in the neighborhood. It's gonna bring over 300 apartments to the neighborhood. It's an empty lot. We're getting 300 apartments. I understand people want more, but if this is all that can be given, it's better than nothing. It's an empty lot. I wanna live in one of those homes. My son, I don't even walk through that neighborhood at night. You don't even see cops walk through that beat at night because it's so bad. There's a G train station right there on the corner. It's so dangerous, 1 out of 3 people skip that stop. They'd rather get off of Myrtle or Broadway because it's so bad at Marcy. If you do this, it's like you're throwing a fresh coat of paint over the neighborhood. We need lights, we need trees, we need life. Right now, that neighborhood is like a desert. It needs water, it needs life. Please help us. And number three, most important, it will bring hundreds and hundreds of jobs to the neighborhood. I'm one of those people that are fortunate to have had one of those jobs. And I've already been in the field over 10 years. And I have helped over 30 people get jobs. And they helped somebody get a job. They helped somebody get a job. They helped somebody get a job. So it's not like if it's a dead-end situation. Once it comes to a halt, no, the jobs keep on going and going and going. And this is why I'm for the zoning of FISA. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Questions? Yes, Commissioner Delos.
So you say you walk through the site very regularly. What do you do in the area?
Me, there's a park close. I walk with my kids. There's a grocery market. I know a lot of people. I was born and raised in that neighborhood. So I have my mechanic since I was 4 years old. He lives close by. So we're always back and forth through the neighborhood. We're always walking through.
Okay, thank you.
But again, not through those blocks, through Flushing, yes, but through those two blocks.
Skip those blocks.
No, I wish, I should have recorded and brought it with me. If you see all the the numbers, it's just, it's an eyesore. It's an eyesore. You work so hard, you come home, you look at it, you feel gross. It's like, I work so hard. This neighborhood has so many beautiful buildings. You look on TV, I wish I could live there. It could happen. We could make our block beautiful. Stop going against it. I don't know why you guys don't, not you guys per se, but have so many people against it. It's helping everybody. It's helping the upper class, middle class, the lower class. It's doing it for everybody. This is what we asked for. They're giving it to us, and we're rejecting it. I don't understand why.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you.
Our next speaker in support is Rafael Rabinowitz. Does it appear that someone is hustling up? Okay. Our next speaker in support is Chaim Orgel. And the last scheduled person who has signed up to speak in support is Ephraim Pilchik.
Good afternoon, guys. I'm not a speaker, so you gotta, know that. I am a CEO of Safety Fire Sprinkler. We do fire protection throughout the city, and I've been dealing with the Rabsky Group actually for many years. And I can tell you a lot of the things that I heard about Rabsky Group was, we service the buildings. They have numerous buildings throughout the city, and I can tell you that they're at the highest standard that I know of. And I don't know what people are saying. Number two, I've actually done the work in a building across the street, which is actually a girls' school right now on Harrison Avenue. And I can tell you that that place was, like the previous speaker was saying, people wouldn't walk by there at night. If I'm not mistaken, carrying the news, there were kids that got beaten there, thrown off the bikes on that same block too. And I remember looking at a school building, I kept asking, what the heck is going on in this site across the street? It's like a vandalized site, and I'm just thinking to myself, I have a company, we have, Joe was saying earlier, he also started off a company, 20 guys, 30, 50, 80. We also started off at 10 guys, we're over 100 people right now, and I can tell you that we have workers which are mainly minority workers, and I can tell you that in the last 2 years, actually, my lead supervisor is the minority guy. I'm saying, started off in the shambles, actually in a homeless shelter, moved out, bought himself a house, okay, and I don't understand why anybody would be objecting to such a project with low-income housing, like he was saying also, whatever it is, it is. Come on, there's nothing there. It's not like you're knocking out people out of their houses to build something. You have nothing there. Give it whatever it is. If the guy gives you 10 houses, give it to him. There's 500 houses. And also, when everyone's saying that people are displaced, the Latinos and the Polish, I'm not from Williamsburg, I'm actually in Flatbush, but I work a lot in Williamsburg area. And I can tell you there's a lot of Hasidic and Jews that are also displaced because of the prices and the housing market that's going on there. So you know what? So whoever gets it, and like everyone's saying over here, is going to be Latinos, and everyone can live in those houses. Especially the low income, which is, I assume it's a lottery. I'm not familiar with these things. But whatever it is, everyone's going to gain over here. I can't see why anybody would object, building such a complex. That's all I can tell you.
Thank you, Mr. Pilchik. Questions? Thank you. So that is the end of the registered speakers, but if there is anyone else in the room who would like to speak, please just raise your hand.
Can I take the time down?
Nice try, Rabbi. Afraid not. You've been through this too many times, and you knew that. I will note that the record on this matter is going to remain open for 10 days through Monday, the 7th of August, for comments on the draft environmental impact statement. And with that, the public hearing on this matter is closed. And Mr. Secretary, any other business?
Thankfully, no.
Thanks.